Perfect. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our speaker series. I'm Lindsay Hernandez, the coordinator for Impact Austin. We're really excited to have you here today. This is our fourth speaker series, so if you haven't been here before, these sessions are really a virtual community learning resource that we have as we start to think about strategic planning for our community in many different ways to address future growth, housing, economic development, immigrant support, food access and quality, parks and open spaces, city infrastructure, public policy, all kinds of topics. So the goal of these speaker series is really to bring dynamic national practitioners together with our local leaders with the goal to offer inspiration, really, by sharing practical models, working projects, and ideas from across the country and within our city. And these help inform innovative solutions to really the challenges and opportunities within Austin, Minnesota. So just a few housekeeping things before we get started. If you have any questions during the session, please feel free to enter them in the chat. Daniel and I will be monitoring the chat, and we will either try to answer them during the session or after. We will create a kind of Q&A document to make sure that all the questions get answered today. And then just a second housekeeping thing, this session is recorded, and we will be saving these and sharing them on a website that we are working on for viewing after today. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to John Garry to introduce our speaker this morning. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Lindsay. John Garry, and I'm with the Development Corporation of Austin, and our mission statements are up here. The Development Corporation of Austin is that group that has traditionally been involved in marketing the community to potential relocating businesses, but then also working with businesses that have opportunities to grow or maybe some challenges and how we can help them. And I'm going to go in a little bit more to that. But a second group we have is Austin Community Growth Ventures, and that's the one that's more focused on innovation and commercialization. Kind of a key distinction between these organizations is one is a 501c6 with members. The other one is a nonprofit organization, therefore can get grant support. Before I go too far into it, and I'm not going to spend much time here because Joe is the main event by far. I'm very glad I'm going before him. There has been an evolution in economic development where it's kind of that true smokestack chasing back in the early days to a recognition that we needed a balance between recruitment, but then also supporting the businesses that are already here. And then definitely more so, and this is true really everywhere, I think, is this economic ecosystem concept. And then more recently, particularly a focus on what can we do to strengthen, enhance, retain our workforce, because there's not enough workers, as everybody knows. So this slide just kind of reemphasizes that, but the goal today is more along the lines of efficient, effective strategies that do increase employment, but do so in a fiscally responsible way and benefit local people as much as those who might come to the community. And you can kind of see on the right here, this slide of the interaction between quality of life metrics and then sort of more of those traditional economic development metrics. Our organization has 4 areas of focus. We still are involved in business recruitment. New Tech Bioscience would be an example of that. We have a very active small business development center. This is the second area of focus, working with local businesses. I mentioned Austin Community Growth Ventures. There, I think our main partner has been the Hormel Institute, where we've worked on things to support their scientists, some of the commercialization ideas. And then certainly, I'll get into this more, is that in the last few years, and particularly the new strategic plan, we've embraced the quality of life responsibility. How do we help strengthen the community in ways that appeal to talented people, skilled people, and that more about making sure that our employers have the people they need and can hang on to them. So from a marketing perspective, you see anywhere and everywhere you look, the it's less about the industrial site that's ready for you to build and more about attracting people and being an interesting community. Here's some examples of that from various, and I think in the upper right there, you have Northwest Arkansas, and Daniel, our consultant, is involved in that, has been involved in that for years. So in our strategic plan, our focus from a more of a marketing perspective is food, health, agriculture, and biosciences. We're thrilled to have what looks to be a major project with the University of Minnesota with advanced agriculture. We have a very active small business development center, and we do programming, partnering with the chamber on social media, business succession transitions. We support businesses that have been here, some for generations, and how do they continue to grow, and to make sure we're prioritizing that. And then fourthly is that quality of life part. And this is newer to DCA, but I think all of our members and our board members recognize that it is crucial to be an integrated part of what DCA does. Two examples of that I got here. Our real estate investment fund, we're just getting this going. It's a partnership with Rovosity out of Northfield. Point of the fund is to, we have DCA and Rovosity will be general partners, and then we'll look for limited partners to invest minimum of $25,000. The investments will go toward projects that will be likely to have an 8 to 12% annualized return, and also have a community impact. So there's more information on those funds. The variety is significant with these real estate funds. Rovosity has been part of new downtown hotels, remodeling. I think the historic renovation building is the Monona Grain Exchange building that is now apartments or condos. And then some reuse of buildings, such as this building in the lower right is a Northfield building that was an older industrial type of building. Then they've split it up. They've also invested in Faribault Foods, another old factory that has been sort of chopped up to be reused for multiple businesses. But you see here, there is sort of a preference for the downtown and the reinvestment, revitalization types of projects. The other thing we're doing is getting involved in this effort. So Development Corporation is working closely with Impact Austin now to work to align community development priorities amongst various groups, businesses, and government. And I think we'll continue down that path. I'm pretty sure we'll continue down that path for the next couple months to working with this group. Sort of transitioning to today's presentation, Joe, as I mentioned, is a nationally recognized speaker, and part of what he brings to the table, I think, is use of data to inform decisions. So I formulated some questions, not that Joe necessarily will tackle these head on, but for us all to think about in terms of our city council, our port authority, our county commissioners, other people. What is the best bang for buck in terms of a strong community, a strong Austin, but also just prudent investments? So some questions here. What is the low-hanging fruit in Austin? Are there ways to have high impact projects that have lower public costs? What's the right data to look at to inform your economic and development and planning priorities? Are we using that data? And if not, how could we incorporate it more? Downtown is something that everybody wants to see be very vibrant. It's also a place where we have a lot of government owned property, public property. So what's the right balance there? I think Joe will probably elaborate on that. And then another thought is just greenfield development. We often look toward the edge of town to do new things. And is that just a kind of rhetorical question or just something to consider? Who does that benefit when we make the investments out there? Are there infill development opportunities we should pay more close attention to? And then with our housing tax abatement, another thought is, are all things equal, or should certain types of projects be given maybe a tax abatement that shows that this is a type of project we feel is a higher priority? Shifting to Joe. Joe Minicozzi is an urban planner, imagining new ways to think about, visualize urban design and economics. He founded Urban3 to explain and visualize markets that are created by tax and land use policy. Joe's picture on my screen is actually in the way of me reading his introduction. But he's spoken widely. He holds a Bachelor of Architecture from the University of Miami, a Master's in Architecture, Urban Design from Harvard. And Joe in 2017 was recognized as one of the 100 most influential urbanists of all time. And Joe, without further ado, let's get it to you.
Thanks, John. Okay, let's see. Got this, share screen. Okay, so y'all can see me all right and hear me okay? We're good. So when I talk about cities, can y'all hear me all right? Yeah, okay. When I talk about cities, I try to come up with different ways to talk about them, or maybe find a common thread between places. And the easiest way I could talk about places is talk about like a form of DNA, that all places are places in time. Cities they have a lifespan to them, much in the way that I do. This is how I started my life. That's when I had hair, and I was 3 months old. And this is my trajectory. Whether I like it or not, I'm going to be my grandfather. Or more importantly, I'm going to be this guy. So I know I'm genetically Italian. I can't change that. But I also have a genetic predisposition to heart disease. So I have to watch my weight. I have to exercise. I have to do things like that. So cities are no different. What's your trajectory? Where's Austin's future? Where is it growing? What are the things that have been part of your life growing up? And these are things to look for other models in other communities, learn from other places, but also just try to find somebody that's a model in your future. So I'm going to go through a lot of stuff, but if there's one takeaway that I can kind of plant in your mind, is find another model of a community. Is it Minneapolis? Is it Rochester? Who is it? And I'll go through those towns as well. But I live in Asheville right now, and Asheville is up in the Smoky Mountains, Blue Ridge Mountains area. Home of bluegrass music, beer. We're 90,000 people. We have 40 breweries. It's a lot. And like any quirky little mountain town, we have men dressed as nuns on tall bikes that eat fire. It's your typical little place. We didn't start this way. Actually, Asheville was the second largest city in North Carolina in the 1920s, and then they just went flat for about 50 years. In the 1990s, they cut a highway, or the 1980s, they cut a highway through the north side of downtown, which is a crosstown expressway. They blew the mountain open and made the highway go through it. This is called the Bowcatcher Cut. Incidentally, the community fought it and proved that you could do a tunnel cheaper than blow the mountain open, but DOT was like, we don't have the technology to do a tunnel. And everybody's like, there is a tunnel right here at Tunnel Road. Certainly, it's like a football field away. You could just use that technology. But anyway, we lost. Then the other side of the cut, the mall happened and our downtown died. This is a story that a lot of communities went through, where they just basically expanded their real estate and retail outside of the city. And you see the downtown just sort of mothball its way up. So Asheville, even though we're right now one of the top 10 cities to visit from tourism perspective, this wasn't too long ago. This is the 1990s, and we were boarded up. This attitude that we had was, that'll never work here. We're not urban. This is the way that the world is. It's modern. This is what we're going to do. We're going to have suburban stuff. Okay. I worked for this guy's company. This is Julian Price, started Public Interest Projects, and our job was kind of like a private real estate development company that was a private version of your DCA. We were helping businesses, but also fixing buildings. So this is one of our buildings before and after. This is basically an old hotel that we converted to apartments. And one of the things that we were constantly doing was talking to the community about, what does it matter for us to do this stuff in the community? We were sort of seen as an outlier, but we're constantly bringing data to the citizens. Why does our work in the downtown help you in your neighborhood? And there's data to prove it. The simplest way to think about it, and y'all are understand agriculture. So when you talk to farmers, they all talk in acre terms, water per acre, labor per acre, crop yield per acre, stuff like that. So here's a crop. This is one of the buildings that we rehabbed: ground floor retail, second floor office, upper story residential. The city did the streetscape project. So thank you, city, for this investment in a garbage can, a bike rack, 2 benches, and a street tree. That's awesome. We were actually accused of being subsidized by some people. There's like, the city's just subsidized your development. I was like, really? Okay, so about $25,000 worth of physical stuff that the city put in. We took the taxable value from 300,000 to 11 million. So the taxes that everybody gets is 3,500% more taxes on an asset that was sitting there. That's a really good return on investment. Do you all have a 401k plan that grows by 3,500%? Wouldn't you like that? So again, people have biases. So like, that's cute, Joe. That's interesting and everything. But we've got this Walmart out of here that's worth $20 million. It's double your building. Okay, fair enough. But it took 34 acres of our farm, our city, to make that happen versus our 0.2 acres. So when you look at the taxes per acre, we're producing 100 times more taxes per acre, double the retail taxes. Who would have thought that a furniture store, a beauty salon, and a barbershop is double the retail taxes? But it is. A lot more residents, obviously, and more jobs. So if you put the numbers out there, you can see what's more productive, the blue side or the red side. So this is what we were making the case for. Now, I want you to realize this isn't complex math that I'm doing here. This is really simple 5th grade division. And we already do this when we talk about cars. Could y'all imagine if I was like, hey, my truck gets 650 miles per tank, it's the best thing here? You know, you'd laugh at me if I said that, right? Because we all understand that tanks are different sizes. So rather than miles per tank, we say value per acre. The numbers just changed, and we should all be driving BMW Acetos. So we understand that commodity that's like $3 to $4 that's how we measure the car, not the tank. So just do the same thing with land on a per acre basis. You'll see it. And the city is essentially, and your county more so, your county can't annex the next county over. So that land is all that you have. Those acres are what drives your community. And I would make the argument that you're essentially like a really big real estate development corporation. In fact, if you look up the word incorporate in the Oxford American Dictionary, it says to constitute a company, a city, or other organization is a legal corporation. So by law, y'all are shareholders in the Corporation of Austin, also Moore County, and the state of Minnesota, but also our country. Joe Biden said this on the Stephen Colbert show: the United States is the largest corporation in the world. This is like 2016. I'm such a nerd. I looked it up. There's a law on the bottom of the slide if anybody wants to look it up. We are listed as a federal corporation. So this is the way our government operates, and we should understand the numbers that go on. So in my case, my city is worth $14 billion, which is 7 times the value of Ted Turner. I expect my mayor and my city councilors to be looking at data the same way that Ted Turner would, and not just look at Facebook and see who's complaining. So this is the challenge that I put out there to every community that we work with, is to understand your numbers. We've done this I'll show some Minnesota examples, but we've done this all across the country, about 35 different states. And this is what we see. For every dollar of county taxes that single family out in the county is paying to the county, their brother and sister in the city is paying about 5 times that. This is the Walmart, that's the mall. This is a 2-story building on Main Street. This could be in downtown Driggs, Idaho, downtown Durham, downtown Dallas. As soon as you start stacking stories, you see it jump to 3 stories, and this is a 6-story building. So we're not talking high rises here. These are buildings that are typical in any community that are pretty simple to build. They're all under the high rise threshold, and you see how potent they are when you stack stories. Incidentally, a lot of people are just like, Joe, you got a problem with Walmart. What's your problem? And you're missing the point if that's what you see. I use Walmarts with every presentation because everybody's got one. But I want to pass a little lesson on to you. I presented at the International Association of Tax Assessing Officers, like all of the tax assessors in the country. I don't know if you've ever hung out with a bunch of assessors. It was probably the squarest conference I've ever been to. They're absolute nerds, awesome group of people. But this guy got up at 8 in the morning and did this amazing presentation on how cheap Walmarts are. Just let that wash over you for a second. That's brilliant. One meeting, 3,000 assessors, you're going to get all of your property tax bills lowered by proving that you have a cheap building. Now, I'm trained as an architect. I'm also like, how is he getting away with this? Like, but the assessors don't care. If it's a cheap building, it's a cheap building. So don't hate the player, hate the game. he's doing the right thing by doing this. So I asked him, I said, Mr. Terrell, what's the useful life of one of your buildings? And he honestly shot back 15, 20 years. We designed the building to depreciate as fast as possible. We'll build another building somewhere else and depreciate it down again. We don't care about the buildings, they're throwaway. So for them, it's a financial calculus of just making the cheapest, simplest investment and minimizing their tax burden. Not their fault. So that's what they're doing in plain sight. It's on us to do the numbers on it and say, is it worth it for you? Is it worth it to have a 15-year relationship with the building, which is the life cycle of a cat? I'm a dog person, I'm just making a joke here. But these buildings that your grandparents left you and your great-grandparents left you in your downtown, they weren't built under that model. And I would argue we don't see this because we're not communicating it in a way that people understand it. So if I can take complex data of your brain, let's say, and use an MRI and show you your brain activity this way with like blue is your brainstem activity and green is your creative thought process. If I can do a CAT scan of your brain, can I do your county? So this is my county. I've got non-taxable in gray. Green is low value. So this is Mount Mitchell Federal Park right here. It's a big park, doesn't pay taxes. I don't care about it. Let's just be crude. Green is low value, purple is high value. This is the Biltmore estate, that big purple splotch. That's America's largest house. It's worth $100 million, which is impressive, but it's also 180,000 square feet. So who's got 180,000 square foot house around? No one person. So that's a wrong way of looking at it. That's a big per tank way. So rather than total value, here's per acre. And let's not stop there. Let me show it to you in 3D. So we can see the relative position of how people produce taxes in our community. And if y'all want to guess where downtown Asheville is, I mean, it's pretty easy. It's a big purple thing shooting off the map. So when I've got friends that live out in Fairview out here, and they think they're paying a lot of taxes, we've got 2 voters in the unincorporated county for every 1 voter in the city. So politically, there's a lot of power in people that live out in the middle of nowhere, but they don't produce a lot. They consume a lot of services to get out there. And in their defense, they don't know what we're producing in downtown. So talk to them about it, show them. So they can see what we're producing for the county because we're all county taxpayers. Incidentally, this is our little cousin of Black Mountain. It's a little village of 13,000 people about 10 miles away. You can see its little downtown popping up right there. So our company's attitude is we're going to show you the information and not just talk about it. And when I first started doing this, everybody's like, well, that's cute, Joe, but that's Asheville. We're different. Okay, here's Kansas City. Can you guess where downtown is? Bozeman, Montana, Manchester, New Hampshire. You see a pattern? Even little Brevard, North Carolina. This is a community of 8,000 people. You can see it's downtown. This is just a spatial analysis. This is a joke that only works for people over the age of 30. I know that, but it's spatial. Near you, here's Northfield. This is actually Rice County, Northfield and Faribault. And it was kind of interesting doing this model. And you all know these places. Northfield has 2 colleges in it. They have a lot of non-taxable land. And they had this bias that like Faribault was doing something good. And I was like, well, from the model, it doesn't look that way. And so we showed the data. So Faribault is in green and Northfield is in red. Northfield only has 2% more non-taxable land than Faribault. So they're pretty close to each other. But check out the difference in the peak value in the model. So the tallest of purple spike, Northfield's pulling double. And then the average value per acre across the city is Northfield's crushing it from a value perspective. But you can see it in the model and how much more reds and purples Northfield has versus Faribault. So don't just take your bias. And the more we drilled into it, it was just, there was more suburban development happening on I-35 over here that was doing, they just converted in their mind, new must mean good. But you can see in the model, this not all that productive because it's just suburban development. It stretches out, consumes a lot of land, and you don't get a whole lot of return from it. This is Northfield zooming into the city, and a couple of the purple spikes. One of them is just this little 2-story building here on the left. And if you had half an acre of this building, it would equal the pretty close to 4-acre strip mall thing. So it's just pound for pound, dollar for dollar. These little Main Street buildings kill it. Rochester, we were hired by the Destination Medical Center. They wanted to have a measurement of what's going on so they could manage it. Very numbers driven people, but they're also required by the state to do that because of the state contribution for the Mayo Clinic. Unbelievable model and what's going on in Rochester. Look at that big tall purple spike. That's the Gonda building, which is the Mayo Clinic. Part of that is is taxable, and it's showing it's about $166 million an acre for that building that pops off the map. But the next one down is still pretty productive at 110 million an acre. So this is the Gonda building, and not everybody can have a Gonda building. I get it; it's a big building, but it's just stupidly productive. So they're met from a measurement standpoint. The city is about 5% of the county's area. It's producing 72% of the county's property taxes. So the city is a shareholder of the county. Is a ratio of that is this is a 1 to 13 ratio of productivity. That's really, really high. Now, in defense of the number, the county is mostly agricultural. When you get into the city, the downtown is about 1% of the footprint, is 14% of the city's tax production. That's a 1 to 15 ratio of productivity. This is really, really high. We typically see like a 1 to 6 is something you want to shoot for. And again, your punch in land area versus your punch in the pocketbook is basically what it is. And now let's not neglect the fact that the downtown is also a county shareholder too. So barely shows up in the county land area, but it's about 10% of the county's property tax production. So that's a 1 to 196 level of production. We have not seen a downtown this productive in all of our studies at this level. So they're doing a great job in their production. So what's good for Main Street is great for the city, but it's unbelievable for the county. And also in Minnesota, good for your state too, because you do get some state taxes out of it. Just for fun, we did the ratio to the state. What's interesting is on this model, that's Minneapolis right here. That's Hennepin County. And you can see that some of the purples are actually performing like downtown Minneapolis out there in Rochester. So it's kind of wild to see that. And again, back to the measurement, they wanted to know what their Mayo Clinic investments were, but also what their non-Mayo Clinic. So if we fertilize the soil with Mayo investment, is other stuff coming along? And the answer is yes. So we measured that. That's about a $5 million Mayo investment, and it's pulling in another additionally 320 million in non-Mayo. So that's going to basically, the garden is growing new taxes out of all of this for the region. So to look at it from and we all know this terminology of the tax value, it's about a 2.2 on the tax value, but also the tax capacity is about a 1.4%, 1.4 times change going from 2014 to 2019. So every 5 years they have to do it, like kind of an annual report. And this is showing the growth, and they're measuring it. Another thing that we did, just because we were there, we measured the downtown against the suburban West Circle Drive complex, just to show the difference in property taxes that downtown's pulling. So again, same amount of area pretty much, but a tremendous difference in property tax production. And then let's talk about road costs. Yes, there's a lot of roads in the downtown, but you're getting so much more money out of it. And there's still a considerable amount of road costs. So if you look at the difference, there's not much of a gap difference in the greater red here versus this greater red. So these are the measurements that you want to start looking at, is what does it cost for you to get this harvest out of the land? The other thing is, again, biases that people have, it's just, yes, the Gonda building's a big building. It's not just about big buildings. And I'll give you one of my favorite examples is Charleston, South Carolina. This is Charleston. They're on the ocean. So when I was presenting, I was like, look, y'all didn't make the ocean, God did. So let's get rid of it. So this is what humans made. The cool thing about Charleston is they're actually very, very old. They predate the Declaration of Independence. So we just said, okay, let's just figure out what the colonists built here back before the United States existed. Buildings like this is the Red Dot liquor store built in 1686. So we're not talking high-tech technology here. That's the building. There's like a bunch of them in the downtown. Here they all are. There's about 21 acres of pre-colonial buildings. I guess that'd be colonial buildings. This is what they paid in county taxes in 2015. Now, they paid city taxes and downtown taxes on top of that, but this is what the county got. So everybody in the county is a county player. Here's what you get. Out in the county, there was a Walmart, there's 21 acres, same area pretty much, but this is what it paid the same year. Now, remember, I told you Walmart's last 20 years, tops 25. These buildings have been around for 230 years. They're producing 13 times the tax productivity, and they're going to be here another 100 years or so, maybe more, who knows? But they're not designed to just fall apart. So as you look around in your world, you'll see these things. They're highly performing buildings that are just simple lessons of urbanism. We call these the little Lebowski urban achievers, these little tiny little things. This is Boston. This is called the Skinny House. This is $62 million an acre. And one of my favorites, this thing in Alexandria, Virginia. This thing is smaller than a smart car. It's like 11 feet wide. Oh, sorry, 7 feet wide. It's producing $64 million an acre. Now, I wouldn't live in it, but somebody is, you know, and so you have to think of the diversity in your community in this kind of housing product, but also how you use your land. Again, these are other townhouses in Washington, D.C. that are 800 square feet. You know, in many cases, these are illegal because we have minimum lot sizes and other kind of stupid rules that we put in place that don't make any sense. And I know that y'all talked about the Northwest Arkansas area, but we did a project in Bentonville where they're doing this. They're figuring this stuff out. So this is their average house value in Bentonville is about 1.3 million. When you look at the townhouses that they're doing, you're pulling 13, 14, 23 million. That's a heck of a lot more than 1.3 million. They're averaging at about 1.7 million for the townhouses. So they're finding ways to do this stuff and rethinking the zoning rules that are put in place that made this stuff illegal. So this is just showing their downtown. And then the townhouses that are coming in are actually outperforming stuff on the downtown at 13.7. Their problem right now is they annexed a whole bunch of land all the way down to the airport, which was not it wasn't a smart move because now they have to have all of this infrastructure and they're just going to grow all out there. And you can see how low value the suburban development pattern is. And it's sort of, I mean, I hate to use the word, but it's sort of a Ponzi scheme. You're going to get this revenue, but you're not going to understand the cost that you pick up along the way because you don't pay that. The developers pay that first round and you're on the hook for the second round. But I'll come back to that in a second. The other thing to measure is your retail. Durango, Colorado is 25,000 people out in the middle of nowhere. So this is a good comparable model for you all. But in Colorado, the counties get all the property tax. So the county should be all over making more stuff in the downtown happen. They should be paying for sidewalks or whatever, because they're getting a ton of return off that. Out here in South Durango is the retail strip. So this is the Walmart, the mall, the Home Depot, all of that is out here. So let's see what the city's getting out of it. So again, the city is getting more out of the downtown. This is total tax production, jobs, any way you slice this. There's this pattern that we see that we've essentially had amnesia over post-World War II. This is a pattern that goes on for generations. We should realize this wealth. A couple of mom and pops, John mentioned this earlier about seeding smaller businesses or understanding smaller economics. This is a good example here of Tim has a coffee shop on Main Street and Peter has a bookstore. So they gave us their books. They wanted to compare themselves against the Walmart. So we did. So here they are. So who would have thought that Tim and Peter are what is that, 15 times the county tax production, 7 times the retail taxes for a bookstore and a coffee shop, and then jobs. So with the data, we could see that the smaller businesses are outperforming. And again, this isn't to blame Walmart. Don't hate the player, hate the game, understand the game, understand what's going on. So let me ask the next question. Who's paying their retail sector employees more per hour? Is it the blue side or the gray side? Probably going to be the blue side. It'll be like a nickel or a dime more per hour, but that's what small businesses do because chances are they know the families that they hired the kids from and all that stuff. Let's ask the next question though. Who's hiring the local ad executive, the local website designer, the local attorney? Is it the blue side or the gray side? It's going to be the blue side. This is the way that these systems operate. And conversely, if you choose the opposite, you're going to be buying into a system that's going to undermine your local economics. So when we see the left side of the screen happen, when we see that kind of rapid development pattern happen, it's essentially taking away money from your greenways, your art teacher, or your ability to have a dancing traffic cop. You just don't have that because the money doesn't exist. And we get caught up in this kind of mirage of where our income is coming from. So I'll give you an example of a pretty rural place outside of Los Angeles. It's up and over the mountain from Los Angeles, a place called Lancaster, 166,000 people. And here's where they're at. One of the things that was kind of stunning is they have 953 miles of roads. I don't know what it's like, so we put it on a map. They have enough roads to go from Los Angeles to Portland. So when I, as a developer, build a road for you, when I build a subdivision, I spread that cost into the cost of all the housing, then I turn around and give you the roads in perpetuity to keep. When we look at the books of any city, and you can look at your city financial statements, they list roads and pipes and everything like that as assets. Okay. When we sit down with the financial officers, I tell them, I'm like, I've got a computer that's an asset. I've got a delivery van for my business and a piece of real estate. Those are all assets. I can sell the building, the van, and the computer. Can Austin pick up its roads and sell them to Rochester? No. So they're liabilities that you're stuck with. And here's how it looks like in Austin, in Lancaster. They built a bunch of roads in 1953 right there. And you can see all the roads that they built. Well, guess what? Those come back with a rebuild 30 years later because they live in a desert and they were hit with all of those reconstruction costs. The developers are long gone. So when they needed more money, they built more roads to pay for. They expanded, did more annexation, let out more development. This comes back for a second rebuild, brings along with it the new stuff. So we stopped them in 2015 and just said, okay, what's your build rebuild schedule for the rest of the life cycle of all this stuff if you just add no more roads? And this is what it looks like. So if you look back in time, that first wave looks really stupid. And if you read any literature from the 1950s or post-war city development, you won't find anybody talking about the long-term costs of modernization. We just went ahead and just were like, we're going to build roads, we're going to build highways, and we're going to all have cars. We just did that without thinking through the long-term consequences. And then in the 80s, we just convinced ourselves, well, this is who we are now. Everybody must live this way. This is the way that American development patterns are. And we just accepted that without any question. And now here we are, it's capitalizing on itself and getting bigger and bigger. City after city that we look at, they're going through this problem. It's harder to tell people in the South this because they're still living on the sugar high of growing. Folks in the North, in the Rust Belt, they get it. You've been through these waves. But basically flushing all their money into the streets and figuring out what can you own and what can you not own. They can only afford 50% of their roads. And again, this is a paradigm that we've been through in an American system of development. Okay, I promised I'd come out of this with some recommendations on how to get out of this or what to do. Obviously measure your revenue, figure out what's happening, use a per acre analysis. But in Eugene, Oregon, we did the cost side laid into it. So this is the revenue of the money coming out of the ground. If you take this city and kind of float it in a lake, this is the side view of it if it were a boat. So what's above the water line is the money coming out of the ground. What's below the water line is the sunk cost for the roads, sidewalks, stuff like that. So we sent everybody a bill for their consumption. So this is what people are paying in taxes. This is what they cost to live there. So in any business, any corporation, you're going to net your revenues against your costs. So what's net positive is in black, what's net negative is in red. Here's the top view of the model. And you can see what's net positive. If you lift this model up, like you're looking for a salamander under a rock, this is the spread of subsidy across the model. So in their community, these are their sticker prices. We broke every city's got ingredients. It's got the building typologies like strip malls or big boxes or apartment buildings or whatever. So this is like I call it the Brady Bunch. It's like 9 building types. So you've got residential, low density, medium density, high density, mixed use, low, medium, high, commercial, low, medium, and high. And these are the sticker prices in their community for what they are. So the single family detached house is subsidized. We've basically built that in all of our systems in any American city. Y'all actually have a straight up discount baked into your tax system where single family is homesteaded. It was at 40% of value. So you do that. We all do that because it's where the voters are. So great. There's an attitude that we all want to live in this type of housing. Got it. But you can't do it for 80% of your land use. You can't have 80% subsidy. So you might want to cool down on it a little bit or find a way to look at like if you look at your whole city like a tree ring, you can't have one tree ring at 80%. You got to balance it out. So just to bring it home a little bit, if your motto is you can taste, the taste you can hear, our motto is we're policy that you can see. So we want you to see what's going on in how policy makes things and just be honest about it. So here what we recommended in Eugene was definitely don't grow outward more, but fill in your downtown. And maybe on the north side, you can see this thing called Crescent Village up there. That's a little new urbanist community. So they've got a little foothill out there. So why don't you find 4 more spots in your comprehensive plan to incentivize those, work on getting that going, get healthy, and then do more single family detached if that's what you want. But you gotta get your incentives are baked into the system already. So just well, nearby y'all in Indianapolis, we did Marion County. We're working on a transit system. There are these 2 transit lines that they have, bus rapid transit. There's the red line that's already built. We're working on the blue line. And part of it was to get through their biases of what they had in their system. So we did a lot of measurements. This is the whole county's building footprint, and then this is their surface parking. So just as a simple metric, they've got 27% surface parking and 42% buildings. This is the consequences of the financial calculus of land use consumption. So let's go back and just turn it all into a square. So they have a lot of berms, buffers, backyards, all of that stuff. This is their roads, buildings, parking. Basically, this is how we use the community. You don't live in the water, so that's outside the box. When this is built, this is how it works out financially. So the buildings are what's paying all of the taxes. So even though they're only 37 square miles, they're producing 54 billion in value. Your stuff that consumes all of your real estate, the stuff that we love, we don't tax it much. So it's not getting that much value. Here's what I find interesting. The roads cost them 17 billion. The parking is only 0.5 billion. Take a look at the land area. We got 29 square miles and 24 square miles. They're pretty much the same land area, but look at the warped difference in
Oh, Joe, did you just freeze? And you're off your mute.
Can you see it now?
There we go. Okay.
Yeah, sorry about that. That was weird. So this is taking a transit cookie cutter, like a 5-minute walk shed from the bus stop out and doing a little cookie cutter down the transit line and doing the same measurement. So we're going to drop downtown out because we want to think about outside of the downtown for the transit corridor and how you're using the land. So currently they're using 36% of the transit corridor has car parking on it, 39% building, and this is the roads. Now, you probably don't remember countywide, so let's bring that back. The thing that was kind of mind-blowing to me is countywide, they had less parking of land use than they do inside their city in the bus corridor. That is unbelievably dumb. And so we wanted to show them like this is not a good practice for y'all. You're wasting that land, and you have a really super expensive bus corridor. That bus ain't cheap. Especially a bus rapid transit corridor. It's like about $1 million a mile. So financially, this is the way that looks. This is Marion of Marion County. Here she is. She's got 1,200 square feet of buildings dedicated to her, 800 square.
Sorry, everybody. Looks like Joe's having some technical difficulties. We're working on that on the back end here. Joe, you back on? Oh, you're on mute again.
Yeah,
There you
sorry
go.
about that. I don't, this is weird. I've never had this problem before. Okay. So we put half the taxes from the building from the parking, because notice the parking's paying 1/70th the taxes of the building. We put it into a savings account and said, how long would it take the building to pay off the road and the parking to pay off the road? And you can remember, this is half the taxes. So that means we're taking the full tax bill and not even worrying about what goes to the police department or fire department. We're just saying, well, let's put half of it into a savings account. It takes 42 years for the building to pay off the road. It takes 3,000 years for the surface parking lot to pay off the road. But let that wash over you for a second. Roads don't last 3,000 years. So if you ever been to Indianapolis, the roads are in miserable shape. And they're just like, gee, we don't understand how the roads are in miserable shape. It's because you got a lot of them. They've got enough roads to go from Indianapolis to Anchorage. That's what they own. And they run out of money in Eau Claire, Wisconsin.
It look like we're back at it. Joe, you back on?
Yes, I am so sorry. I have no idea what the heck's happening here. Let's see if we can just muscle through this and get this done. This is their houses with no vehicle, houses with one vehicle, houses with two vehicle, and houses with three vehicles. So you can pull your data and see who's got cars and who doesn't. And so 50% of their households have one car or less countywide. Inside the transit corridor, you're looking at 60% of the households have one car or less. So not everybody has cars. So why do you have 2 parking spaces per residential unit? Finally, so I want you to, as you go forward with your comprehensive plans, think about these biases that we carry forward. Also think about growing your wealth and your measurements. So I'll give you a bad example. This is Rancho Cucamonga, California. They're at the tail end sprawl of Los Angeles out here in the Inland Empire. The Inland Empire is kind of mind-blowing. It's about 5 million people. It's 2 counties, 27,000 square miles, which is about the land area of California. You've probably never been to Rancho Cucamonga, California, or inland or Ontario, California, but you know about Charleston or Greenville, South Carolina. Here's what they built. And can you tell where their downtown is? So I have to put on like a special X-ray vision so you can see it. Now remember the ratios. Their land area of downtown to the city and their what it produces in property taxes to the city is less than a 1-to-1 ratio. So remember what I said, 1-to-6 is kind of what we're looking for. Brevard is 1-to-7, Asheville is 1-to-6. So okay, we're gonna make it. Here's their downtown, their city today. They grabbed some ingredients around their place. And we basically projected what that would be if they planned it well. So let's just put them side by side. So by messing with 12% of their land area, they can harvest $2 billion in new value. So let me just close with a statement from Austin's own John Madden. Coaches have to watch for what they say, or coaches have to watch for what they say, what they don't want to see, and listen for what they don't want to hear. You have to have an unbiased sorting of information. You want to take it all in, and some of it might not look good once you start hearing it. And just be honest about it. So our standard is to call it geo accounting. We're just going to behave like your accountant and put it on a map and see what it looks like. So we don't care if you buy a boat, right? Your accountant doesn't care if you buy a boat. Your accountant cares if you can afford a boat. So you may have biases on how you grew in the 60s and 70s and 80s, 90s, 2000s, or whatever. Any kind of new development that's been added in your community post World War II, it's question it. Understand what's going on, put it on a map, and make sure you understand the cash flow. I'm going to recommend one of our good friends, Chuck Marone. We recommend his. Okay, hopefully I got that. Got that done. Are you there?
Yes, we're here.
Hi, Joe. Yep, I think we can hear you again.
Did I get to the end on that one? It's I don't
We
know
did
why I
not
was-
hear the book recommendation. Can you
Oh.
give that one more time?
Yeah, the book recommendation is, let me just share it. Chuck Marone's books, The Strong Towns Bottom Up Revolution, and also Confessions of a Recovering Engineer. A lot of the math that we describe, he describes as well in these books. But I think they're very useful to give to elected officials, to community, to friends, to help them understand. Chuck's got a great way of conversationally explaining how cities operate. And it's real simple. Just if you do the math, you'll find a lot of these problems. So that's basically it. So other than the technical questions, issues, did it work out? Are you there?
Yeah, Joe, just as a side note for everybody, there was some work that was done by Austin a while back. I just put in the chat sharing that talks about some of the same approach, Joe. And so that way people can download that are on the call right there. So thanks, Steve, for sharing that. And so, John, just knowing that we're having some technical difficulties with Joe, is there, we do have a question here, just want to make sure we cover, is how much of a factor are tax rates, particularly through this thought process, right, on tax rates? And so, John, with local tax rates, how are you seeing this approach potentially playing a factor in that? And how does tax rates play a factor in the work you do on business recruitment retention? So as Joe talks about how tax rates fluctuate based on how you grow to pay for all your infrastructure, that obviously has an impact on how you can recruit businesses, correct?
Yeah, I think we occasionally do kind of a apples to apples comparison with sort of our neighboring communities, just to see if we're comparable, competitive on that. I think we've always found that we are, and in fact, I'm sure others here on this call could get more specific, but that we're actually on the lower end of property tax. Minnesota's maybe a different story compared to other states, but it's on people's mind. But I don't think we've ever been seen ourselves as at a disadvantage on that in terms of tax rate.
Okay. So there's another question. Having done some research on Austin, what are 2 things that we could do better from an economic perspective? And Joe, from a general sort of approach, maybe for you, and then John, getting specific on some things that you're seeing that Austin could be doing better from utilizing the perspective that Joe shared. Thanks, Abel. So who wants to tackle that first?
What was the question?
So the question is, what are two things that a city, a general city, could do better when taking this perspective? And then John, following up with that, what are two things specifically Austin might be able to do better utilizing this POV? So Joe, general to you, and John, specific Austin to you.
I mean, I think start by measuring the parking lots. Just something as simple as that. How much land area do you have in parking? Why do you even have parking requirements whatsoever? And just watch the conversation unfurl. Like, people will just talk about, like, Moses delivered you your parking code. It's just, why are these issues? Why do we worry about all of the consequences when there's no problem? And there's a lot of codes and policies and things that have been put in place that were kind of naive. They were well intended. It's just like, oh, we're all going to have more cars. This is going to be a problem. No one ever thought through the long-term effect.
So I think Joe is stuck in the matrix somehow and getting stuff done. John, while we're waiting for him to come back, what are two things that Austin might be able to do a little better moving forward when looking at this point of view?
Well, I'm not sure if we need to do certain things better, but maybe more.
Okay.
For example, I think there's a strong interest in developing a downtown property, but I think we could probably get more focused or spend more time looking at where can we, over the long haul, have greater density in downtown, particularly with commercial development, but just a higher density in downtown. A blend of things, but that is one that comes to mind. Joe's back. Joe, did you have a second item you wanted to mention aside from parking?
Parking, I think, just be honest with the citizens. Walk through your tax system so that I go through a lot of slides, and the most important image in my entire presentation is that picture of my mom. My mom has a high school education and nothing more. And it's not that she's stupid or anything. It's just that she's never had access to the information that I've had access to. And I've seen this time and time again, people using jargon and words that people don't understand, and it's trade language. Like, the FAR of this building is a 2.0. It's like, who cares? Like, just how do I explain it to my mom? And how do I let my mom in on the information so that she can make a reasonable decision? I actually have more fault with us professionals talking about this than any citizen that's out there. So if we're not explaining it simply to people, if we're not helping them understand, then we're going to get irrational responses. We're going to get people feeling their way through the information rather than understanding it. And so that's one thing is my challenge to everybody on this call is to just find a way to talk to folks in a way that they can understand it. So we use pictures.
So John, you had talked about, this relationship with density and understanding how that might play itself out, particularly in your city center, right? And understanding how that might manifest with a little bit more intentionality. What's one more thing that you think from your perspective that Austin can expand on? Maybe better is not the word, do more of or focus on to help, some of these future land decisions?
Well, what comes to mind, I think, is really just, I'm certain, like, Stephen Lang is on the call, and I know Stephen does great work with data. I think let's spend more time listening to Stephen and his team about sort of what's driving the decisions, I guess, from a policy perspective, and tie them to the data that we have. I'm not saying we don't do that, but it could be something that could be given greater emphasis.
Okay, all right. Well, we're at 10:01, and Joe, thank you for jumping on the call, even with some of the technical difficulties. Part of the reason why we do this, Joe, and this is, to everybody on the call, is not just to be able to have information sharing, but to also create relationships between folks that are doing interesting work all over the country and the work that you are doing within your own community. And so please feel free to follow up with Joe and his team over at Urban3. They really are doing some amazing work all over the country. I have been both the recipient of some of that data here in Northwest Arkansas and other projects, and we have used it to great effect. And so thank you, Joe, for spending some time with us. And then, John, is there one or two sort of last thoughts that you want to kind of impart in the sense of a provocation or a conversation that you want to continue, knowing that you're a part of a lot of these big conversations that many on the call are on? What's the next step on some of these conversations? What are some things that's a practical next step that you want to see based on perhaps this point of view? Even with Steve Lang, you said, let's listen to Steve Lang more. How do you do that? Where do you go with this? What's a practical next step with some of this information?
Well, I think as Impact Austin moves forward with some of what we're intending, there's going to be plenty of opportunities for engagement. So it's back to Joe's point about talk to people and listen to people and tell the story. So kind of stealing his message, but I think we can look for venues and opportunities to share more of this picture with a greater variety of people. I think people are interested in it and they want to be well informed on it, but it is a matter of, engagement and getting to where people are at and giving it in a form that they can understand.
Okay, all right, that's great. So that's definitely something with the Impact Austin initiative going on, is how is data going to be shared more effectively and more freely with folks, so as they make both individual decisions, whether it's investments or on policy decisions, that those policies are informed by this data. Is that what we're hearing then on this?
Yeah.
Great. So team, here's what's going to happen. We're going to record this. We'll clean it up. We'll be ready for posting. Let's see, and we've got a last minute post here from Holly. We have data. I think we're not utilizing it because we don't know how to. Well, that's a great provocation for getting a group of people together to try to figure out what is the data, how do you tell the story of the data, and what questions are you asking of the data? Data is only as good as the questions you ask of it, right? And so if you have it, how do you get people asking the right questions around the table? And just looking at everybody on this call, I think you have a lot of curiosity on what's moving forward, what policies, how do we make investments, how do we make the right decisions around utilizing those resources. So thank you, Holly, for adding that. And it sounds like John and the team will continue those discussions moving forward. Lindsay, any last minute discussions or points before we end the session?
The only thing I wanted to mention was thank you for joining the call today. And our next speaker series will be next Monday, May 1st. The topic of that series is investing in the community story, the power brand, and experience design. And that will be at 10 a.m. on Monday, May 1st.
Yeah. One last post. I think you also need to get that data to the county policymakers so that they understand how the areas that they have jurisdiction impacts these things. Absolutely. And I think what's really good, just to let everybody know, that the alignment and conversations that are currently occurring between the folks in the county and the folks in the city is really quite refreshing and amazing on that sort of top-down collaboration. It is relatively rare that you have that sort of coordination. And so just congratulations to Trish and Craig and all of their teams to try to find out how to better align those policymakers moving forward. So thanks that very much. And thanks everybody for joining on this. And we'll continue to ask these big questions. And we appreciate everybody out there talking. And Lindsay will let everyone know when we're ready to upload the video. So appreciate everybody and have a wonderful day.